Welcome back to our channel. Your dime might hold $500,000. A 1975 No-S Roosevelt dime just sold for $506,000 at auction. Like and subscribe to uncover hidden dime fortunes. In 1977, the United States Mint was in a period of quiet transition. The tumult of earlier decades had subsided. The silver had long since vanished from circulating dimes, and the Roosevelt design carried on largely unchanged since 1946. Yet, even in this steady production environment, small oversights still managed to slip through unnoticed into the stream of commerce. The Philadelphia and Denver facilities struck hundreds of millions of dimes that year with little fanfare. But what no one at the time realized was that a subtle error on a small handful of coins from 1977 would one day draw collectors into a hunt as riveting as it was improbable. For decades, these coins circulated undetected, their secret patiently waiting for the right pair of eyes to find them. Clara Mitchell was one of those rare collectors who thrived on patience. Her love of coins stretched back to childhood when she'd first sorted through her grandfather's old wheat cents on the kitchen table. Over the years, she developed a quiet expertise in U.S. errors, particularly struck-through and off-center coins. By the late 1990s, she had made a habit of visiting small-town banks across Pennsylvania where rolls of coins still occasionally yielded hidden treasures. On a damp November afternoon, Clara walked into a neighborhood branch and purchased 10 rolls of dimes along with a few rolls of nickels. At home, she brewed a pot of coffee and began her usual methodical process. The first 2 rolls passed uneventfully, with the rhythmic clink of dimes stacking neatly in rows. Midway through the 3rd roll, however, her practiced eye caught something she hadn't expected. Under the glow of her lamp, one 1977 dime showed something unusual about its reverse. At first glance, everything seemed correct. The oak branch, the torch, the olive branch, all intact. But the lettering on the left margin caught her attention. Barely visible under magnification, she noticed a faint doubling of the word United. Not only that, but the bands across the torch seemed faint, almost incomplete, while the rest of the strike remained bold and crisp. Clara carefully set the coin aside and finished the roll, though her thoughts kept returning to it. Could this be a case of strike doubling?
Misaligned die?
She fetched her strongest loop and examined it again, turning it in the light and noting another peculiarity. The obverse seemed unusually weak in certain areas, yet the fields remained unusually smooth. The effect was subtle but unmistakable once seen. Over the next several weeks, Clara consulted old auction catalogs and research guides but found no mention of a documented 1977 dime with such traits. Some collectors dismissed her find as a minor anomaly, but one seasoned dealer encouraged her to send it for authentication. The grading company's findings startled even her. The label read, 1977 Roosevelt Dime Mint Error Weakly Struck Reverse Incomplete Bands Partial Die Cap MS66. The term, partial die cap, sent a jolt of excitement through Clara when she read it. As it turned out, during production, the obverse die of her coin had apparently retained a thin cap of metal from a prior strike. This caused subsequent strikes to lose sharpness and impart a soft, ghost-like quality to the affected areas. The result was a rare and striking error, an incomplete but beautifully dramatic misstrike that was virtually impossible to fake. As word of her discovery spread among error collectors, interest in 1977 dimes suddenly surged. Other hunters began scouring rolls, hoping to find their own examples. Over time, a few other specimens turned up, each displaying unique variations depending on how long the cap die had remained in service. Some were more dramatic than hers, others more subtle, but all shared the same eerie softness and incomplete detail that made them stand apart from the ordinary circulation strikes. What fascinated Clara most was how long these coins had circulated unnoticed. For years, they'd passed through hands, bought sodas, paid tolls, jingled in pockets before finally ending up under her watchful gaze. The thought filled her with a strange sort of reverence. Coins meant to be spent and forgotten had instead carried a quiet secret for decades. The collector market for her error grew more animated with each passing year. At first, only die-hard error specialists took notice, but as mainstream auction houses began featuring the coin, bidding wars occasionally broke out. Prices climbed steadily, particularly for high-grade examples with strong eye appeal. Some buyers prized the subtler specimens while others coveted the most dramatic distortions, but all agreed on one thing. The 1977 die cap dime was a modern rarity of significant importance. By the early 2020s, Clara no longer needed to explain her find to skeptical collectors. Auction records spoke for themselves. Prices soared beyond anything she had ever imagined for a clad dime from the late 70s. She watched as one example after another shattered previous records and marveled at the thought that she'd been among the first to recognize its significance. Late one night, she sat at her kitchen table holding her original discovery in its slab, turning it slowly under the lamp. The faint doubling, the soft, incomplete bands, and that ethereal reverse still drew her in all these years later. Her eyes flicked to the most recent auction results, now printed in a glossy catalog on the table beside her. The 1977 Roosevelt Dime, with its rare partial die cap error, now commanded prices ranging from $44,000 to as much as $122,000 at auction, depending on condition and striking quality. Clara smiled softly and let the coin rest in her palm, its weight familiar and comforting. To think that a quiet dime struck in an unremarkable year had become one of the most coveted errors of modern coinage seemed almost poetic to her. And she knew even now there were more of them out there waiting for someone else to see what others never noticed. In 2006, the United States Mint continued producing the Roosevelt Dime with the same steadfast design that had graced it since 1946. Decades of minting technology and refinements had nearly perfected the process by the 21st century, yet even with cutting-edge machinery and stringent quality control, errors sometimes still crept into the stream of commerce unnoticed. Billions of dimes rolled off the presses that year from Philadelphia and Denver, the gleaming copper nickel-clad coins destined for vending machines and cash registers across the country. But hidden among those countless pieces, a handful of them bore a peculiar flaw, subtle at first glance, yet extraordinary once understood. For months, even years, those flawed coins passed through hands and drawers, their secret unremarked. Ryan Walters didn't consider himself a serious collector when he first began searching coin rolls at his local bank. A middle school history teacher with a quiet fascination for the unexpected, he had always appreciated the stories hidden in everyday objects. Coins felt like miniature time capsules to him, and he spent his evenings poring through rolls looking for silver dates or minor double dies just for the joy of discovery. One rainy evening, Ryan stopped by his bank and picked up a modest stack of dime rolls, more out of habit than expectation. At his kitchen table, he opened them one by one, letting the coins clink into neat little piles. A few pre-1965 pieces brightened his evening early on, but otherwise the hunt yielded little. It wasn't until midway through his sixth roll that something made him pause. At first, it was simply the way the coin caught the light. The 2006 Denver minted dime seemed softer, somehow its edges just a little less defined. He turned it over and examined the reverse under a magnifier. That's when he noticed the torch's bands were faint, almost ghostly compared to the sharply defined oak and olive branches. The letters' states of showed faint doubling along their edges, and the fields looked eerily smooth, almost proof-like in certain areas. Ryan leaned back, puzzled. He compared it to several other 2006 dimes from the same roll, but none showed the same peculiar characteristics. To his practiced eye, it wasn't simple wear. It had the hallmarks of something struck wrong at the mint itself. He set the dime aside and continued searching, but his mind kept circling back to it. The next day, he brought the coin to a local dealer who frowned in concentration as he studied it. The dealer ran his thumb lightly over the reverse before reaching for his own loop. Then he looked up at Ryan with a faint smile. "You've got something here. This is a capped die strike, and a pretty strong one at that." Ryan felt his pulse quicken. He'd read about capped die errors before, but never imagined finding one himself. As the dealer explained, a thin cap of metal from an earlier strike had adhered to the die's face and continued striking coins. Each successive strike grew softer and more distorted as the cap deformed, spreading the design and dulling the detail. In Ryan's coin, the cap had been in place long enough to create a dramatic and unmistakable effect while still preserving much of the original shape. A rare combination. Intrigued, Ryan sent the coin to a grading service for authentication. Weeks later, the coin returned encased in a protective holder, its label reading 2006 D. Roosevelt Dime, Major Obverse Die Cap MS66. The certification confirmed what the dealer suspected and what Ryan hoped. He was holding a genuine mint error of significant rarity, struck in a year when few such pieces were known to exist. Word of his find spread quickly among error collectors. In online forums and at coin shows, other enthusiasts marveled at the dime's unusually strong detail despite the capped die and its well-preserved surfaces. Ryan was surprised by how many collectors began scouring their own 2006 rolls in hopes of uncovering another example. Over time, a few more surfaced, but no two were identical. Each cap wore differently over time, creating unique distortions. Some featured crescent shaped devices or bizarrely stretched letters, while others bore almost unrecognizable obverse portraits. But Ryan's specimen stood out for its clarity and completeness, a near-perfect illustration of the error. As months turned to years, demand for the 2006 capped die dime quietly escalated. Initially, only error specialists expressed interest, but once a major auction house featured Ryan's coin in one of their highlight reels, attention broadened. Collectors who previously ignored modern-clad coinage began adding it to their want lists, impressed by the sheer rarity and beauty of the flaw. Ryan never planned to sell his coin at first. But as prices for similar errors climbed, he began following the auction results more closely. One sold for a surprising sum, then another fetched even more. The market value began to reflect what specialists already knew, that the 2006 capped die dime was among the most dramatic modern mint errors to reach circulation and one of the hardest to find in high grade. Sitting at his desk one quiet evening, Ryan took the dime from its holder and turned it slowly under the light. The softened bands of the torch, the doubled lettering, the silky smooth surfaces, all still as mesmerizing as the night he'd found it. On his computer screen nearby, a recent auction headline caught his eye, confirming what collectors whispered about for years. The 2006 US 1 dime coin with its rare capped die error now commanded between $35,000 and as much as $108,000 at auction, depending on grade and severity. Ryan smiled faintly and slipped the dime back into its case, feeling a quiet satisfaction. To think that such an unassuming coin could hold such a story and such value reminded him why he'd started searching in the first place. Somewhere out there, more of them still waited, hidden in rolls or tucked into jars, ready to surprise someone else the way his had surprised him. In 2021, the Roosevelt dime remained a quiet staple of American pocket change, its unchanging design, a symbol of continuity in a turbulent era. The United States Mint had been through unprecedented challenges in recent years, adjusting to staffing shortages and high demand during a global pandemic, while still producing billions of coins to keep commerce moving. Philadelphia and Denver struck the copper, nickel dimes by the millions that year, each one bearing the familiar torch flanked by oak and olive branches, the timeless mottos crisply rendered. Yet even in such an automated and tightly controlled process, a few pieces slipped through that defied expectation. It was late summer when Emily Hayes first picked up a few dime rolls from her neighborhood bank. A graduate student working on her master's in American history, she'd fallen into coin roll hunting as a kind of stress relief. The hunt was calming, and she liked to imagine the stories behind the coins she found. That particular day, she sat at her tiny kitchen table under a warm desk lamp and opened the first roll of shiny 2021 dimes. The first few coins were nothing remarkable, clean and new, their brilliant surfaces reflecting her own face back at her. But halfway through the second roll, one coin gave her pause. It looked different somehow, even though at a glance the date and mint mark were correct. Emily leaned in closer, holding the coin under her magnifier. The first thing she noticed was the reverse. The torch bands were blurry, with faint doubling on the word United. The flames at the top of the torch seemed to stretch in odd directions, soft and shallow compared to the sharp branches. Even stranger, the obverse showed Roosevelt's profile, slightly distorted, his features appearing almost melted at the edges. But the fields of the coin shone with an unusual brightness, more like a proof than a regular business strike. She set it aside, thinking maybe it was just damage from circulation, but something about the way the details faded yet kept their overall shape kept bothering her. She spent the rest of the evening comparing it to other 2021 dimes from the same roll, yet none of them showed the same strange qualities. Emily couldn't shake her curiosity. The next day, she stopped by a local coin shop with the piece and showed it to the owner, an older man who immediately reached for his loupe and fell silent as he examined it. "This," he said after a long pause, "is a capped die strike, and a very fresh one." Her heart skipped. She'd read about capped die errors before, but assumed they were mostly a relic of earlier decades. The dealer explained patiently that during striking, a thin piece of metal can stick to the die face and form a cap. The cap continues striking coins, and with each strike the design becomes weaker and more ghostly, creating a fascinating progression. The cap die usually doesn't stay on long, but when it does, it can produce a handful of remarkable pieces like the one Emily found. He handed it back with a faint smile. "This is one of the better modern ones I've seen. You got lucky." The idea that luck could still play a role in modern coinage delighted Emily. On a whim, she submitted the coin to a top grading service for authentication and waited weeks with quiet anticipation. When the package finally arrived, she tore it open to find the coin sealed in a protective holder, its label reading, 2021 Roosevelt Dime capped die MS67. From that moment on, the coin took on a life of its own. Emily posted a few pictures of it in an online coin forum and was startled at the reaction. Longtime collectors and error enthusiasts immediately recognized the significance of such a recent capped die error and praised its condition and clarity. It didn't take long for word to spread. A few dealers even reached out to her privately with offers she never expected. She declined at first, wanting to learn more about what she actually held. The more she researched, the more she realized how rare it was to find such a dramatic error from such a recent year, especially in such high grade. Over the next year, auction records for similar coins began climbing steadily. Modern era collectors had grown in number and interest as more people realized that even current circulation coins could hold surprises. A 2021 dime with a capped die error graded slightly lower than hers sold at auction for more than anyone predicted. Then another surpassed it months later. The demand kept growing as collectors who specialized in modern minting flaws competed for the few known examples. Emily watched this trend unfold with a mixture of amazement and quiet pride. She kept her dime displayed on her desk in its holder, occasionally turning it over under the light to admire the strange ghostly softness of the design, the way Roosevelt's face seemed to dissolve into the smooth fields and the flame of the torch curved almost like liquid metal. She thought about how many other 2021 dimes were still sitting in jars and drawers, perhaps hiding other surprises waiting for someone else to notice. Late one evening, as she scrolled through the latest auction results, she saw a listing for another 2021 capped die dime strikingly similar to hers. The final hammer price caught her breath. It confirmed what she had already begun to suspect and what many collectors now understood. The 2021 US 1 dime coin, with its rare and dramatic capped die error, had quietly earned a place among modern minting's most coveted oddities. In the right hands and at the right auction, her coin now carried an estimated value ranging from $25,000 to as much as $90,000 depending on grade and demand. She set her phone down and picked up the dime once more, smiling faintly at how such an unassuming little piece of metal could carry so much history, mystery, and worth all at once.